we are looking ahead to the Seahawks-Buffalo Bills game at the weekend as the Seahawks look to continue their good season so far. They're at 6-1 now after beating the 49ers, hoping to go to 7-1. We're going to come on to the Bills in a couple of moments, Robbie, but first, the trade deadline passed this week. It was a very quiet trade deadline. There was a couple of minor moves on the day, and the day before, people like Quan Alexander were traded. Kiko Alonso going the other way to San Francisco. But the Seahawks didn't do anything. They didn't add another pass rusher. There were a few names linked, but nothing got done. What did you make of all of that?
Yeah, man, I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping for someone else. As we talked about previously, I would have liked to see at least two more. Another D end and another defensive tackle would have been great. But we really don't have a ton of draft capital, and Hollister is really the only big name that we had to trade. I mean, unless you're interested in trading someone like David Moore, which I don't think they're interested in doing that right now. We don't really have much to offer other teams as far as draft capital goes. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's not overly surprising, but still a little disappointed.
There are a few names, as I mentioned, that got linked. Pat McKinley came out and said that he wasn't going to be traded. I think he mentioned that the day before, on the Monday. And then he put out another tweet, I think it was earlier today or even yesterday, saying that essentially the Falcons were looking for a round 4 pick for him, that they turned down a 5th round and a 6th round offers from one or multiple teams, and that last year they had turned down a 2nd round pick for him. So I think it's pretty safe to say that the Seahawks were looking for another pass rusher. I mean, I would have presumed that they are one of the teams that spoke to the Falcons about a 5th or a 6th round pick. And Jacob Martin is another name that has emerged today that they tried to get back. I think for a 5th round pick, they made an offer to the Texans, who said no. Very quiet on Ryan Anderson. There was very little talk about him in the end. And Ryan Kerrigan, it was revealed over the weekend that he obviously asked or wanted the Washington team to consider trading him, but ultimately he wasn't going to go anywhere. So I think if there were, the Alden Smith rumor as well there, Robbie. So it's pretty clear. If people are thinking, well, the Seahawks were just happy with what they had, or that they were content with what they got after Carlos Dunlap, that's clearly not the case. They've very clearly been trying to add somebody else, and it just hasn't worked out in the end.
Yeah, and man, I would have liked to see Martin back. I think that would have been a great trade. I mean, even for a 5th round pick, getting him back would have been solid, I think. And the tack thing is weird to me. I don't understand the Falcons' game plan here. Like, if you're going to lose a guy in the offseason, why not try to get some compensation for him? And I don't understand where they're going with that. Kind of same thing with like the Texans. I don't really know what their thought process is. And, you got these teams that are clearly, they're out of the mix and they're going to lose these guys anyways. Why aren't they trying to get more draft capital going forward? And I don't know how it has to do with, I actually have no idea what it has to do with. So it's confusing why, some of these trades didn't work out, and it was very quiet.
It's even weird with that, Robbie, is that if this was a usual NFL year, you could perhaps make a case that, well, if Pat McKinley reaches free agency, Vic Beasley got a $9 million contract this year as a free agent. Maybe he could get something similar. I don't know. He's had less success than Vic Beasley, but if teams are willing to pay, then maybe they get a better comp pick a year down the line. But because the cap is going to go down this year, many people expect it's going to be at around 175 or $180 million, then, there's very little chance that someone like Pat McKinley is going to get a big payday. You would have thought that getting anything for him right now to make sure that you guarantee a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick for 2021 will be better than taking your chances when he reaches the open market. There's a decent chance that they will get nothing for him now. And if they do have to make some change in the offseason, if the GM wants to sign some new players, they'll get nothing for him anyway, because even if you sign players for $1 or $2 million, if you sign a lot of those players, then even if you get a $40 million contract a year, eventually they will toll and you will not get a compensatory pick. So I don't really know what the plan was with the Falcons there. With Martin, it's a little bit different. He's still under contract. It's the same with Kerrigan. It's the same with Ryan Anderson. I don't really know why teams were so precious about holding on to these players. I mean, the draft is going to be, we've kind of gone full circle here, Robbie. When the Seahawks made the trade for Jamal Adams, the college football season was essentially cancelled apart from the SEC. So we were all kind of saying, well, the draft's going to be a bust next year anyway. Who needs draft picks? It's completely changed now. The college football season is motoring on. The only players who aren't playing are like the top first-round players and a handful of others. You are seeing these players playing week in and week out. You're going to get a good grasp of who they are, how they're developing. The draft will be a pretty normal draft next year after all. And you're going to need those draft picks. You are going to need as many draft picks as possible next year because you need cheap talent. You're going to need to fill some holes because the cap's coming down. Teams are not going to have as much money to spend. I think it's going to be a really challenging free agency period for players and teams, because whereas in the past, and you're still going to see this, you're going to still see the biggest names when the clock ticks over to whatever the time that it starts, Robbie. You're going to see a massive overload of news from Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport and Mike Garofalo. This guy's signed here, this guy's signed there. But then the second tier guys, the third tier guys, are going to end up finding out there's just not the money there that they would have expected to get. And are they going to take the best offer? Are they going to wait like Jadeveon Clowney? What is going to happen here? And that is going to have a huge impact on comp picks. It is meaning that people are going to have to fill some holes probably with draft selection. So I'm not sure why some of these teams, especially the worst of teams who are going to be picking in the top 10, didn't just get some picks.
Yeah, I mean, in the Clowney situation, kind of just, that's the team. Teams should look at that. I mean, obviously Clowney didn't get what he wanted. When we traded for Clowney, one of the first things I said was like, okay, great. I mean, we gave up a 3rd round pick and, a couple of players, but even then, if he went and signed somewhere else, we all assumed it'd be a big contract and we'd get a 3rd rounder back. So it was kind of like a wash, but yeah, and it ended up not happening. So, I mean, I don't know if they're realistically thinking that they're going to get, a 4th or, 3rd round pick for some of these guys, like, that are just going to be free agents. They're not going to get big money this offseason. So yeah, I'm not really entirely sure why they didn't go out and just try to get whatever they could. I mean, even if it's a 7th rounder, it's better than just losing them for nothing.
Well, no new players coming before the deadline then. They're going to have to make do unless, Robbie, they go and sign somebody else who is available. Now, there is one player who's been cut this week, who is a pass rusher, who has had some success. We've already mentioned his name. Vic Beasley was cut by the Titans. He had a very strange year where he was one of the first players to sign in free agency, pretty early in the process, signed, as I mentioned, a $9 million contract for this 1 year. With the Titans, I think it came with a $6 million guarantee. Then for some reason, when training camp came around, he didn't say he wasn't going to play because of COVID. He wasn't going to hold out for the year. There was no conversation or communication with the team about that. He just didn't turn up to training camp. He went AWOL. They couldn't find him where he was. I don't know how much of his bonus went by the wayside as a consequence of that. It felt like they were inevitably just going to move him straight away and write that one off. And they didn't. And then he starts the season. He's been pretty crap for them. Everybody's been talking about the Titans' pass rush not being particularly good. It should be better than it is given the personnel that they've got. And then he's dumped this week. And I think someone at the Bills, I think it may have even been the GM, just said, we've seen enough. It was kind of like this, like a sigh and a harumph that this guy has just let everybody down. So that's worth taking into context. We don't know what's going on in Vic Beasley's life. There may well be a reason for all of this. But he's the kind of guy that in the past the Seahawks have maybe taken a bit of a chance on. They didn't get anybody via the trade deadline, even though they clearly wanted to. So is it worth taking a chance on Vic Beasley? Do you even just bring him in for a meeting, if nothing else, or try and get him on the practice squad or whatever? Surely it's worth at least considering, unless the Seahawks know something that we all don't about him and why it didn't work in Tennessee.
Yeah, very confusing for him. I don't really understand the whole issue with him and why showing up to camp so late. And then, the Titans, they added Clowney as well, and they've got less sacks than we do. They're not playing very good at all. So yeah, very confusing team and confusing about Beasley. And yeah, I think it's worth getting him in just to at least have a conversation with him, like being like, what's up? Like, what's going on? I mean, can you we need all the help we can get. So, I mean, bringing someone in who's got the experience, I mean, at this point, it probably will be a really cheap deal. He's not going to get very much, especially with all that's going on. You imagine he comes in for, maybe minimum, maybe a little bit more than minimum. And then, if you go week by week from there, I mean, it's not guaranteed. So if it doesn't work out, you get rid of him and go somewhere else. So, and again, I brought up last week that idea now that we didn't go out and get somebody else, I think Clay Matthews honestly comes into play again, because, I think at this point we have enough in the cap space that we could go out and get him, more than what the Rams are paying him now, and, making it worth the opportunity for him to come back and, at least rush the passer on 3rd down. So I do think there's still work to be done, and there are players available. It's just at this point it's slim.
With the cap situation, it's actually a lot worse than I think people realize. Certainly, I think the websites, everybody knows the websites that you're going to go on to see where the teams are with the cap. And for a while, it showed the Seahawks had about $3 or $4 million to spend. As soon as they made the trade with Dunlap, they were actually over the cap. So Dunlap it's been revealed today, has taken, I think, he's converted a portion of his salary this year into a bonus. That has been shifted on to next year. It's saved the Seahawks about $2 million to get them back into the black for this season. So Dunlap's done them a solid. And, it's kind of a win-win situation, really, because now what will happen is if he plays well enough to warrant the Seahawks keeping him on his existing deal next year and not cutting him or trading him somewhere else, then he will earn a little bit more. I think it's about 14 million rather than 10 or 11. And if the Seahawks obviously cut him and move him, he's a free agent. I suspect that the players maybe aren't as aware, or some of them won't be as aware as the GMs and the teams of what free agency is actually going to be like next year. So he probably thinks that will be a good thing to reach free agency at his age. I'm not convinced. I would not want to be a free agent next year. And we'll see how it works out for teams, because I can imagine that there might be some bargains to be had as desperate players just sign contracts to make sure that they're getting money, and especially the ones like Chris Carson, who are 7th-round picks who've never really made their money. The chance to earn a few million will mean more to them than somebody who's already got 50 million in the bank like Javion Clowney a year ago. So it's going to be so unpredictable next year, this whole free agency period. Back to Beasley. My thought on this, Robbie, is I don't really care what happened in Tennessee. If it means playing Vic Beasley or a tight end as a pass rusher, I'll take Vic Beasley. Because with the greatest respect to Stephon Sullivan, fair play to him, he got out there and he gave it a go. It was a tight end rushing the passer. And if anybody's seen the clips that were put on him on Twitter, I'm not saying it was really, really bad. It wasn't, it's not go over the top. It wasn't horrendous. But he looked like a tight end rushing the passer. So if that's where they're at, calling guys off a practice squad to come and rush the passer in an emergency, if they need a bit of speed off the edge, and they clearly don't think Shaquem Griffin had a snap as a pass rusher of the weekend. They clearly don't think that he's the solution there. If they need someone to provide a bit of speed off the edge, they might as well give Vic Beasley a go. The one thing is that Titans have very deliberately not cut him until today, and that is to make sure that he reaches waivers. If they'd done it yesterday, he wouldn't reach waivers. He would have been a free agent. They'd have been on the hook for all of his salary. Now, because he's on waivers, someone can claim him, and I think would have to pay him about $1.85 million. So that's not too expensive. There may be teams who think we can afford that. We will take that on. We will give him a go on this $1.85 million. And the Seahawks will not even have a chance to get him then, Robbie, because I doubt, the only teams that are behind the Seahawks on the waiver list are going to be Pittsburgh and maybe the Chiefs.
Yeah, smart move on the Titans' part, right? You can save a little bit of money there. And then you just got to wonder, though, most teams are probably scared off by him. And I imagine he clears waivers and makes it to the free agency. There might be a team that takes a chance on him. I could see someone like, the Chiefs taking a chance on him or something, if he falls that far, one of these teams that's in contention that has a little room to play with, and maybe giving him a shot and seeing what they could work with. That would be a good move for them as well. But yeah, smart move on the Titans' part.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see if the Seahawks give him a go, because like I mentioned, he's the kind of player that they need, some speed off the edge, some quickness. They don't have enough depth in that area. Benson Mayo and Carlos Dunlap are really their only two sort of kind of Leos. Carlos Dunlap's a big guy for a Leo, and they've said they're going to play him there. Benson Mayo is not really a natural Leo. He's more of a defensive end as well. So, I think getting somebody like that who can rush off the edge, provide a bit of speed, would be a good thing. Right, on to Buffalo. Very similar teams, Robbie, I think, when you actually look at the makeup of them. Defensive-minded head coaches, yet neither team's defense has been particularly good. I think that's more surprising on Buffalo's part, because it's how they were. It's kind of how they had their success under Sean McDermott was, Josh Allen was really erratic, but I still had a bit of magic up his sleeve every now and again, and they played good defense. Yet this year, they've really gone as far as Josh Allen will take them. If he plays really well, as he did at the start of the season, they win games, they look impressive, they can match up with anybody, they can score 30 points plus, they can look really good. When he has an off day, they look like a really kind of mediocre team as a consequence. The defense has not really stepped up to the plate. But the Seahawks, very reliant on Russell Wilson. The defense has been a shocker for most of the year. The whole of the year. So very similar teams. But how do you view this game against the Bills, an uncommon opponent who the Seahawks don't face that often? Obviously, the Bills don't face the Seahawks that often either. Often creates quite an intriguing matchup.
Yeah, it really comes down to our defensive line versus their offensive line, right? They have a really good offensive line and they protect Josh Allen really well. And Allen does a good job of, taking off with the football. He's not Kyler Murray fast, so I don't think they're going to worry about that as much. I think it really comes down to being able to make him throw the football. He does a good job though. I mean, he's a heck of a quarterback, but he's really streaky as well. So you can get him dancing around a little bit and make some erratic throws. So that's where we're going to really have to attack it. I mean, I'm not really worried about like a Devin Singletary in the backfield or anything like that. I just really think it comes down to our D line versus their O line, and who plays better, Russell Wilson or Josh Allen. I think I got to give the nod to Russ. I mean, their defense isn't very good. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're definitely streaky as well. So this is going to be a very, good game for Russ. And I think it just comes down to limiting Allen.
The thing is, though, is I would have said that, look, I think Kyler Murray is better than Josh Allen. And if you'd have said, look, it's, neither Arizona or Seattle have got particularly good defenses. And if it comes down to a matchup between Murray and Wilson, then I would go with Russell Wilson because he's more experienced, more seasoned veteran. Even as good as Murray is, you would side with Wilson if you had to go with either. If you had to put $5 on either one, it would be on Russell Wilson. Yet Wilson doesn't win that game. The Seahawks don't win that game in part because of mistakes and the defense. So it shows you how, I think a team that was more complete, a team that had a top 15 defense as opposed to a bottom 10 defense, they wouldn't have those. They'd be able to play enough complementary football to be kind of where the Steelers are right now. I mean, the Steelers are playing very good complementary football. They don't play brilliantly for the whole 60 minutes of every game. I mean, the Ravens outplayed the Steelers of the weekend for large parts, but they do it just enough, don't they, on defense? They've got a good pass rush. They have a playmaking safety. They have fast linebackers who are making plays. Even though they've lost their star linebacker, they've fit other guys in. On offense, they have receivers. They've got a big arm quarterback who's experienced, who can manage. They've got a running game. They've got quite a lot of them. They've got explosive players. They've got a lot that is working for them. That's hard to find flaws with them. And that is ultimately why the Steelers are the number 2 team per DVOA and Tampa Bay are number 1 at the moment. And you can make the same case for them. They have the players in order to play complementary football. The reason why the Seahawks are 6th is purely because of the defense. The defense has gone from 28 on Football Outsiders to 21 this week, Robbie. And that's a nice jump. You could go, well, that's great. It's trending in the right direction. However, it's in part because they beat the Niners, who were ranked 8 on offense. And yet Jimmy Garoppolo was practically playing on one leg for that game, if we're being really honest. I've gone back and watched it twice now. And he was, even trying to scramble, it was a struggle for him. Any kind of movement in the pocket was a real challenge. He wasn't planting his foot at all with his throws. That wasn't a top 10 offense that the Seahawks faced at the weekend. They were down to like their 7th running back. Tevin Coleman got injured. Deebo Samuel wasn't there. How healthy was George Kittle really? It wasn't a top 10 offense, however well they played the previous 2 weeks. So, it's that one thing. And because of the defense, however better Russell Wilson is compared to Josh Allen, there's always going to be that slight worry for me that Wilson's going to be asked to do too much. He's going to have to go all the way to Buffalo and score 4 touchdowns and put up 35 points and do all of these things, because however erratic Allen is and however bad Buffalo's defense may be, the defense just won't have an answer. I can just see it now, him sort of scrambling around, someone getting an arm on him like they do with Cam Newton, but he breaks through the sack and breaks off a 15-yard run, or finds Stephon Diggs and Diggs is wide open and you just wonder there's a coverage bust of some kind. How's that happen? You can just anticipate these things, Robbie. It's kind of made the Seahawks season, hasn't it? This is what they are. We've seen moments of absolute class from Wilson, who could break the record for touchdown passes in a season. The offense really rolling. It's had a few iffy moments too, but then it gets on defense and you've got your head in your hands. And I worry for games like that. I'm going to worry about this for every game against the Rams the following week, the Cardinals after that, the Eagles after that. It's going to be this way until week 17.
I can see where you're going with this. I'm gonna go the other way though. I think it is trending in the right direction, and I think we're getting healthier. We should get Jamal Adams back. Carlos Dunlap isn't going to come in and be a world beater for us. He's not going to come in and be the savior, but he is going to help. He's going to help that rotation. He's going to come in and help. I think we are going to see, a better defense going forward. I don't think we're going to, 21 is better than 28. And I can see us maybe even getting up to, 18 or something, and like continuing to trend upward. And that's not saying much, but that's better than where we were at. So I'm going to look at it as the positive view and see that we're heading in the right direction. I think, I'm going to be honest, Stephon Diggs is a good player, but I'm not, he doesn't scare me. He doesn't scare me like DeAndre Hopkins scares me. Cole Beasley is a decent slot guy. Still doesn't scare me. John Brown, their other wide receiver, he's fast. It doesn't scare me. Their offense does not scare me. Josh Allen and ability to escape is the only thing that makes me think they could have an actual chance at winning this football game. And if Bobby plays pissed off as he did this last game and they able to send him some more and get some hits on Allen, get in his head, I think we could really put some pressure on this team. And I could see this being a comfortable win for us.
I'm a little less. Cole Beasley is that kind of annoying receiver who, just finds ways to. We've seen it so often, like the average receiver who's kind of like a white slot receiver who just seems to get 10 catches against the Seahawks. We've seen it far too often over the years. But I don't know. I mean, the good thing about the injuries is a positive. If they get Jamal Adams back, just for me though, Robbie, I don't know what getting these guys back, how much of a big impact. I know people are really banking on. Wow, I mean, this week the national media they've seen the Niners game, and they've just gone, wow, look at the defense was so much better, and Jamal Adams has hardly played, and Snack Harrison's going to come back, and they've really gone all in on that narrative this week that when the Seahawks get players back, this defense could actually be a new thing with Dunlap coming in as well. And there's some merit to that. Hopefully Dunlap can come in and be the edge rusher that they've missed, and Jamal Adams can come in. He's a very good player and he can produce. The only issues is what I would say is that Jamal Adams will come in and be Jamal Adams. But Jamal Adams is not going to make Quinton Dunbar play better than the terrible performances that he's putting out so far. He's been a big disappointment. Even more disappointing has been Quandre Diggs. And Diggs struggled when he was playing alongside Adams in the first 2 weeks and has never improved. Apart from a couple of big hits on Sunday, he's not really done anything this year. It's been a huge disappointment. Trey Flowers, fair play to him, has had 2 much better games in the last couple of weeks. I think you have to give him credit for that. But he's still Trey Flowers. And Shaquille Griffin has struggled when he's played as well. Is LJ Collier going to be able to rush the passer better when Jamal Adams comes back? Is Jaron Reed suddenly going to play up to his $9-10 million contract when Jamal Adams is back? Possibly not. Do the Seahawks get caught between these 2 methods of play, Robbie, again? So, they struck a reasonable balance at the weekend of blitzing, and blitzed a lot more than they had in the previous games. But then we've seen this. We saw them blitz a lot against Atlanta and New England, and then by the time they played Dallas, they've gone, we can't keep blitzing like this. We're giving up too many explosive plays. They completely rein it back, and we see a Minnesota game. We see the no pressure on Kyler Murray at all. So they come back to blitzing again. If they try and blitz Josh Allen and he just runs away from them and he gets into the second level and he starts using his legs, are they then going to sort of panic and go, right, okay, we've got to be really conservative again? And then they're not creating any pressure. It's this kind of like constant battle between who are they? What are they trying to do? Why are certain players not playing better than they are? And a final point on Snacks Harrison. When is it? I don't understand. When is he ever going to get on the field? Because when you actually look at it, if you go on PFF and you look at their grades, they have 3 guys on the Seattle's defense who they would classify as playing at an elite level. There's one player who they've classified as playing at elite level, which is Bobby Wagner. I think a lot of that must be down. He must have just had 100 out of 100 on Sunday, because I don't think he's played at an elite level for 7 games. He's played well in probably like 2 games or 3 games, and the rest has been pretty normal. And then they've got KJ Wright at a very good grade. They've got Poona Ford as their 3rd best rated defender. So unless you're going to take Poona Ford off the field, or you're going to say, Jaron, off you come, mate, Snacks Harrison's coming in, it's hard. And, Brian Monet's is looking like a serviceable number 3. how does he find his route to the field, Robbie? That it just doesn't seem, it goes on and on and on every week, doesn't it? I can't, short of an injury, I'm not sure how he gets there.
Well, a couple of things. DeMontre Moore is he got suspended, so I mean, I'm guessing he's probably going to take some of his snaps if he gets called up. And then the other thing about Jamal Adams, I just want to go back to this and kind of what you were saying is like, is he going to make these players better? Well, Jamal Adams, regardless of how he's played so far with us, he is one of the better defensive players in the league. I mean, you can't deny it. He's a heck of a football player. Everyone knows that. And then it changes the game plan for the other team, right? I think if you start sending Adams on a blitz and he's getting home and he's hitting the quarterback, they're going to have to game plan for that. And so hopefully in theory, it would make, our DNs would get a little more space for it because they might have to chip down and worry about Adams coming. And if Adams doesn't come, if they fake the blitz and he drops back and, they're still thinking about him, and our DNs hopefully can get around, or even send in a linebacker or cornerback blitz, anything like that. I mean, it's a game plan scheme that should eventually change for the other team. And that's what we want to do, get them off their rhythm. And so in my opinion, getting these guys in should help, and getting guys like Jamal Adams in should help. Like, I know the first two games we can make an argument back and forth whether or not he was positive or not positive on how he impacted the game and whatnot. But I really think bringing him back in is going to be beneficial. And I mean, getting a good football player in is good for us. So I'm excited to get him back. With Snacks though, I just think, I don't know whose snaps he's actually going to take, who's going to come in for, but I think that this is a game we probably need him, because here's a guy that I worry about is Zach Moss. Like, that's a guy who, I don't want to get that guy going. If they start running the football well and we can't stop the run, then all of a sudden you start looking at the play action, and that opens it up a lot more for Josh Allen. So you don't want to get that guy going. Like I said, I'm not really super worried about Devin Singletary. I think that's a guy we'll probably shut down pretty easy. But Zach Moss is one of those running backs that kind of makes me nervous. So getting that stop, not opening up the play action, we really just have to put the pressure on him. And I think this is a game that we honestly can do it. Like I said, and you're right about Cole Beasley though. He is one of those guys who are just, I could see him catching 10 passes for 80 some yards, and you're just like, someone put a bell on that guy or something. How is he so open all the time? But again, as long as we're limiting him to 3 and not the touchdown, which I think this is where they'll probably struggle, is inside the red zone. As long as we can limit them to 3, I'll put the game on Russ to win it for us.
I was reading a lot of stuff about Buffalo this week, and apparently they're very good on play action. They're very good on third down because they manage to get into very manageable third down situations. They kind of tend to take a shot on first down, or, Allen's got this, is great, but he's very difficult to tackle. I mean, he's so big. He's kind of comparable to, I guess, even like a more agile version of Cam Newton, really. When Cam Newton got into space, it's very difficult to bring him down, and he can kind of plow through tackles in a way that most quarterbacks can't. And Allen's got that same ability. When he gets out into the field, he's actually got a little bit more speed than Cam Newton ever had. And he can really be a threat with his legs. And on play action and, his kind of exaggerated boots, if you get him into space, he has got the arm strength to launch it, 70 yards downfield if needs be. And, when he gets into those areas, he can have a look. Is Stephon Diggs open? It probably is as simple as this, Robbie. Is Stephon Diggs open? No, I'm setting off and having a run. And that becomes very frustrating to deal with. On Cole Beasley, the one thing that really makes me worry about him is Julian Edelman's game in week 2, where Edelman was virtually unstoppable working in the slot. And this is the concern I have. And I want to make a point here about, I don't want to be completely negative, and I'm sure I'm going to get lots of remarks about the fact I'm being very negative today. But when Edelman was, what he did well is they managed to match him up against Jamal Adams quite a lot, and had a lot of success in that matchup there. And the problem with Adams in Seattle so far for me is, against Atlanta, there was that surprise element. They did things that Dan Quinn could not have anticipated Pete Carroll doing with the blitzing safety. And I think it caught Atlanta off guard. I think against New England and Dallas, they kind of had a bit more of an expectation of what was coming, and they found a way to handle that better. And if you are blitzing Adams as a designated rusher, Robbie, as often as the Seahawks were in those first 3 games, he was practically rushing. Oh, my word. He was blitzing more than anybody else in the league. As we talked about, it was basically like him, Shaquille Barrett, and TJ Watt were blitzing. And they're pass rushers. They get called as a blitz because they line up in a linebacker in a 3-4. Adams was blitzing as often as they were. So he was practically rushing all the time. And if you do that, you have to play man coverage. And that puts a lot of pressure on your cornerbacks. And they were just getting blown up. And the worry about this game is if you put Adams up at the line and have him blitzing all that time, I don't really want Stephon Diggs lined up against Trey Flowers and man coverage or Quinton Dunbar. And if Adams is going to be there and they move Beasley out to match up with him and they have to check out of a blitz and he ends up getting lined up with Beasley, I worry about that matchup too. And Cam Newton was never really been known for his precise finding the slot. He was always very good at like just chucking it to Greg Olsen and Olsen making a huge catch. That was like Cam and Greg Olsen's like chemistry together. They always seem to find each other. And Josh Allen's not, and Cam, and neither of them are really sort of touch passers, are they, over the middle? They're not, it's just not who they are. They're big athletic guys with huge arms and great mobility. But Cam could find Edelman, and I worry that Allen will be able to find Beasley in those kind of matchups. So that's a little bit of a concern I have. I want to see Jamal Adams play, Robbie, for one other reason as well. I think the Seahawks need to get a good look at this guy. I think they need to see him between now and the end of the season to see how this fits. Because you are going to end up having to pay this guy $18, $19, $20 million a year. And when the cap coming down, you might have $40 million invested in two players, Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams on defense. And I think eventually this needs to be more of a conversation than it is. Yeah, you've paid 2 first-round picks, a third, and a player for this guy, and you've got a fourth back too. Do you want to pay him $20 million a year? Because you've got no leverage. You have no leverage in contract talks. If he asks for that, he's pretty much going to have to get it. Because what's the alternative? He holds out. You lose him for nothing, having traded the house for him. It's the same with Laramie Tunsil and the same with Jalen Ramsey. By trading for him without a contract in place, you then basically write a blank check for the player. They need to know between now and the end of the season whether this guy really is the fit and what they were hoping for, and that they can build their defense in part around him and in part around Bobby Wagner, that he can fit in, that he is going to produce at a level that is going to warrant this massive investment which is coming down the line. They need to get as many games in as possible because, listen, you don't have to, when you trade for a guy, you don't have to have him forever once you've traded for him. I mean, like Brandon Cooks has been traded for about 3 first-round picks in his career. He's gone from team to team to team. You've got to know whether it's $20 million worth spending here. We need to see Jamal Adams out there so that if it's next off season or the one after, you can make a proper decision on this.
Yeah, I agree with that. We definitely need to see him out there. But I'm gonna go back to just, you touched on a lot of points there that I want to talk about. First of all, Julian Edelman is way better than Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley is not Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman runs really precise, slick routes. I'm not saying Cole Beasley is a bad route runner or anything like that, but I don't think he's on the same level as Julian Edelman. With that being said, I think, we've also figured some things out without having Jamal Adams around, right? We figured out, he only played 1 game, but I think Reed looked really good last week. And I think giving him a shot in the slot will be great. And he might be able to help cover Beasley. Ugo Amadi should be back as well. In those first 2 games, we were trying Marquise Blair at nickel, and so, when he went down, we had to adjust, and Ugo Amadi's played really well for us. And he was out last week, but getting him back will be beneficial. And I think Reed is another guy that they were really high on. He's young. He seemed to play really well last week. And if, hopefully he can continue to grow. Also, you add the fact that we did add Carlos Dunlap. Things are a little different than when we had Jamal Adams that first week. And so, hopefully they've started to figure some things out. They don't have to send him hopefully as much. And hopefully they can send Bobby, KJ, or, Jordan Brooks, or, even Ryan Neal for that matter. Like they don't have to always send Jamal Adams. And I think part of the reason why he was going so much was because he was the only one generating pressure. He was the only one getting to the quarterback. And, that was something that we needed. And, we were trying to generate as much pressure. We weren't getting it from our D line. Getting it from Jamal Adams was, what we had. But now we've had to work without that. Obviously the Arizona game is, beside the point when, he dropped back 50 times and we didn't get 1 pressure at all. But, that I think that has more to say about Kyler Murray than it does, anything else. But that being said, I really think that, we can attack this differently on our defensive side. We don't have to send Jamal every single time. And, he was up there, and, he is really good at rushing the passer. So, I mean, I do want to send him sometimes. I'm not super worried about sending him as much. And I'm also not super worried about him guarding Cole Beasley.
On the point of I completely agree that Julian Edelman, obviously you'd have to be a madman to suggest that Julian Edelman is an inferior player overall in his career compared to Cole Beasley. But I do think this is worth pointing out. Here is Julian Edelman's stat lines for the season. Week 1, 5 catches for 57 yards. Week 2, 8 catches for 179 yards. I'll let you guess who that was against. Week 3, 2 catches for 23. Week 4, 3 catches for 35. Week 6, 2 catches for 8. And week 7, 1 catch for 13. So really, one good performance this season. Cole Beasley has had a 58-yard game, 70, 100, 53, 112, 32, 45, 24. Julian Edmonds the better player. I'm not sure that Julian Edmonds the better player today. That's the thing. You could easily make a case that looking at the production, Cole Beasley is having the better season. So we'll see. I don't.
He also has a better quarterback, though.
Yeah, yes, he clearly does. I mean, the Patriots have been struggling. Certainly, that is an argument as well. I think it's an interesting match. I think to try and be positive, because I haven't been on this podcast and I acknowledge that. I think what you've kind of got to do with this is you've got to work out which way you want to go with Allen, because I think stopping him, I think with the run game stuff with Zach Moss, you're just going to have to take your chances with that and see if you can match up 1v1 in the O-line and try and slow him down. Zach Moss has had a good game last week, but hasn't really been healthy, has he? Hasn't really done anything for the rest of the season. I'm not particularly that frightened by their running game. I've said that now. It'll be a barnstormer at the weekend. But with Allen, it's, do you just want to try and pressure and blitz and get after him and get in his head and force mistakes? Is that the best way to go? Because I can imagine a scenario where that works, where you just get into him enough where he struggles. But I can also imagine a scenario where if you make him take what's there and you kind of sit back and you play patient and you don't rush him as much and you kind of let him sit there, and as long as you can cover well downfield, might be hard to do against Stephon Diggs, he may well force mistakes, because the one thing with Josh Allen is he has shown flashes of brilliance, but he's also shown, even this season, flashes of WTF. What are you doing, man? What was that? What was that throw? Where was that going to? I mean, he's just as likely to beat 3 attempted tackles on 3rd and 30, stay on his feet, set, throw, find someone wide open. Everyone's like, wow, how did he do that? As he is on a 1st and 10, just drop back and throw it straight to a wide open defender with no offensive player anywhere near him. So I'm not sure whether pressuring him and going all out and taking your chances there is the best way, or if it's just kind of just sitting back and going, like they did against Miami, see what you can get. If you're willing to take 7 yards there and go to 2nd down, then do it. And just test his patience, test to see if he's willing to do that for a whole game, because at some point he's going to want to go downfield. He's that kind of player, isn't he? And that's when he might just risk it a little too much.
I mean, yeah, that's what he did with the Titans, right? And the Titans, I mean, they only got 3 QB hits on him, and yet they still picked him off twice, and they kind of sat back, and the Titans put a beating on Buffalo. So you could see the scenario where we drop back and try to make him throw the football instead of trying to pressure him very much. But I think he can get happy feet and dance around the pocket a little too much, and you just don't want him taking off and picking up big yards. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Again, he's not Kyler Murray, but he is fast and strong and big. He can definitely wing that football. So I think, yeah, just sit back, let him play. But I think you do have to apply a little pressure. You want to make sure that he's, get him overthinking, get him into a scenario where he's overthinking the scenario. Is Jamal coming? Who's coming? Or am I going to have to throw quick? Or can I sit back? How much time do I have? You don't want him just to pick apart the defense. And, I think we could really do that. And if we could play it like the Tennessee Titans played, and I think another thing is really comes down to our running game. If Carson's playing, we can control the clock and run. I think we can run on this team too. I think we can run quite well. And, with the way Russ is playing, you start looking like we're talking a lot about our defenses versus their offense, but let's talk about, man, their defense versus our offense. Our offense is so good right now. And I know Russ had that, he's had some erratic throws and such, but he's still playing at an incredible level right now. And I have a hard time imagining this scenario where he doesn't play a great game against Buffalo. Like, he could, but I mean, even then, I think we could still get the running game going. So and then it depends on if Carson's going. We really need Carson back. That's the other scenario in my head that plays out. I really would want to see how we run against them.
I remember watching the Buffalo Kansas City games. That was one of those games where, wasn't it like a double header on a Monday night or something? There was like a game on it'd be 9 o'clock our time. I don't know what, it's obviously a bit earlier for you guys, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something. I don't know when it was actually. It may be a bit later than that. Either way, it doesn't matter what time it started. But the Bills played the Chiefs, and the Chiefs, Robbie, ran and ran and ran, and they ran very well. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a huge game. Patrick Mahomes wasn't the star on the day. It was the running game. It was the offensive line. But someone made a good point. I think it might have been Mike Florio after the game, was that as successful as Kansas City were controlling the game with their running game, it ended up being a one-score game right at the end because they hadn't put up enough points. Yeah, they'd sucked up a lot of the clock. They'd shortened the game. They'd kind of run very well. But they hadn't scored any points. They'd not been able to transfer that into points. And you can run at this Buffalo team. I mean, they've not defended the run particularly well from what I've seen. They didn't in that game. It was just like, Mahomes was basically saying, if you're going to line up with just 4 guys up there and you're going to we're just going to run you every time. And I think he was checking out a pass plays all the time, giving it to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think he admitted that after, and they were running and running and running. It was crappy weather. It was probably the right thing to do. But it ended up being a closer game than it necessarily needed to be. Kansas City dominated the game, and I think it was a 6-point game right at the end. And it wasn't for some fortunate penalties on the final drive that then getting a 9-point lead with a field goal. The Bills could easily have sneaked that game. So what I'm saying is that I think as much as I want to see the Seahawks run, especially if Carson's not there, I think you can't really rely on that. And the other game I've seen with Buffalo was against the Rams. And the Rams did a very good job in misdirection, dragging and moving the linebackers. The Bills do not play the Niners and the Rams twice a season like the Seahawks do. So they're not really used to seeing any of this. The Jets and the Patriots, they don't do this kind of thing. The Dolphins don't do any of this. I think it might be good to steal a few ideas from the Niners and Rams for this game. Try and get things flowing to one way, come back the other. You have those sort of screens where the quarterback bootlegs out and then he turns and throws it back the other way on a screen. It might be a time for a play like that. Get the ball out to DK quickly. Maybe even have DK coming across on a sweep. Maybe having David Moore use that David Moore a few times last weekend. I think it's sort of getting everything flowing one way, trying to get to the perimeter. I think that's really where you can attack Buffalo and then have a go at these cornerbacks and defensive backs. I don't think they've been playing particularly well. The Seahawks will do that. And the other thing, Robbie, make sure that DK Metcalf has got a package of plays where you're going to guarantee him the ball. Let's not have another game like Arizona. You've got to try and make sure that he's there. And if you take a few shots and it doesn't work out, Tyler Lockett will come to the party. Get the tight ends involved as well. They're being underused. You're not getting value for money there. If Greg Olsen's not getting it done, stick him on the bench. Get Will Disley more involved. Get Jacob Hollister more involved. Give Colby Parkinson some snaps. If Olsen's not doing it, you've got the options there to look at other guys.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Rams game. They were down, or the Bills were up like 28-3 or something, and then the Rams came soaring back. So yeah, there are a lot of things you can take away from that game. And weather, that's another good point. The weather is going to be a big factor in the game as well. So yeah, you look at the you were also saying at the beginning that they were playing close with the Chiefs and whatnot. But I mean, it sounds familiar to us, right? I mean, it seems like we've got the game in hand. And all of a sudden we're only up by 6, and that happens a lot. And so you're seeing that a lot this year in football. I don't want to be overconfident in this game, but I'm feeling pretty good about this one.
I've got the weather channel up here, Robbie, having a look. Sunday, the 8th of November, it says it's going to be 65 degrees at the highest, 52 at the lowest, so somewhere in between that. Sunny, bright, and 10% chance of rain. So there you go.
Perfect football weather.
So there you go. It looked pretty nice in Buffalo at the weekend. It looked quite sunny, and hopefully that's going to stretch on until this weekend. and make the conditions more favourable for the Seahawks. Because I was like listening to Colin Cowherd today saying he was doing some playoff prediction. He had the Seahawks playing Tampa Bay, and he was like, if the Seahawks play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the rain in January and the warm weather team, they won't like it then. The Seahawks always play well in the rain. And I was like, no, they don't. It's better when it's sunny in Seattle. You're a bit cold, they can play well in the cold, but not necessarily in the rain. And I can speak from experience there, having seen the Seahawks lose a couple of games in the pouring rain, having travelled all the way over there. Right, prediction time. You can go first. Robbie, you are ahead again because you predicted a win against the Niners. I predicted a loss. So you are ahead. Go for them. What do you think against Buffalo?
Yeah, I'm going to go 33-17 Seahawks.
33, that's a very confident prediction there.
I'm feeling good about this one.
33-17. That would be the biggest win of the season.
I think we're on a roll. I think we're trending in the right direction. So this is the time to really start to prove it.
You know the Jets game is not for another 6 weeks.
I have a whole different score for that one.
I kind of look at it two ways because I know that I'm always hesitant with my prediction, Robbie. I don't like gambling against the Seahawks. I don't like betting against the Seahawks because you have to bet against Russell Wilson. But at the same time, they've won 6 and lost 1, and I kind of feel like the way that they've played, they're probably going to have to drop some games. And I don't know whether to sort of say they're going to win this one and then say they might lose the Rams one instead or whatever. I'm just not sure. And I'm going to say the Seahawks win this game, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than you suggested. I think I could imagine, a slightly lower scoring game. I'm going to go 24-20, but I could easily see the Bills. I think if the Bills win, we'll probably come and do the podcast afterwards and go, that's one that the Seahawks have chucked away. That was a winnable game, and they've blown it. But I think that's going to be the key for the Seahawks. I think that their biggest opponent this year, Robbie, may well be themselves. Can the Seahawks stay out of their own way? That they have been able to for some games, and that's why they've won. They didn't stay out of their own way against Arizona, and they lost.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a scenario where it's like that. I mean, it's just by nature of how they've been playing, and every game we've been in, every game feels like it's way too damn close, and so it's always uncomfortable. So, but this one, I'm gonna go out on a limb. I just feel like this is a game where I think we put it together with San Francisco, and there's a bunch of reasons why you could say San Francisco is not as good as maybe their rankings show, or all the injuries. And San Francisco, I feel bad for them. I mean, they have just been decimated by injuries, so I realize that they're not at full strength, but still, getting a win like that and having it be, for 3 quarters at least, be what felt like a really good time for the Seahawks. I really just think we're going to put it together and keep going. This is our time to shine. And I will eventually predict a Seahawks loss. I promise you that. I've got them.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering.
I don't want to be that. I don't want to complete homer, but I do some. I do think we will lose, and I will predict a loss eventually. But I just don't think this is the game.
A final thought on it. I just it kind of just dawned on me about the running game. Does that concern you at all? The fact that if Carson isn't there, DJ Dallas, could it be a slightly one-dimensional?
I mean, it depends on how Dallas runs. I think he can be really good if he just needs to be more decisive, and he needs to hit the hole a little harder. I mean, I think he has all the tools and the ability. He seemed a little hesitant this last game. And again, I didn't want to harp. I was really hesitant in our post-game podcast to really, give him a negative grade, because he did score 2 touchdowns, and, he was our leading back. But I just wanted to see more. I wanted to see him really hit the hole harder. And I think, probably being a little timid in his first game, hopefully he's got that out of his, out of the way, and, he's maybe a little less nervous, and he can do that. And maybe Travis Homer, depends on is he healthy enough to play. It seemed like he was close last week, and, I think he dressed, but didn't play in case of emergency. So I think we'll be okay.
I'm with a couple of quick thoughts here. I think this is the kind of game where if DK Metcalf's as good as we all kind of think he is, it's like make him the feature today. If you're not going to have the running game and the running backs, if Chris Carson's not back, this is the chance to show this guy looks unstoppable at times. make him unstoppable. Use that weapon, challenge the Bills to stop DK Metcalf. Use him and say, how are you going to stop this guy? Because if you can't, he's going to win us the game. That's one thing. The other thing, Robbie, I'd love to see is I want to see the defense play with the same attitude and intensity that we saw. I want to see Wagner play angry. He played angry in the last game. Where's that been for, the difference was palpable. The way that they used him, the aggression that he played with, the intensity that he played with. With Jamal Adams back, I want to see him feed off that energy, not go back to how he was in previous weeks. Let's see a pissed off Bobby Wagner for the rest of the season in every game, because he has looked a bit passive at times. Let's see him be really aggressive and see if he can match that performance, because that's the thing for me, is I kind of come out afterwards, you say the defense played better apart from that fourth quarter. But how much of that was because of the Niners and how much of that was because of the defense? Well, here's your chance. You're playing the Bills and Josh Allen on the road, and then you have to go to LA and play the nemesis, the arch nemesis, the team that you always fail to stop on offense. Here's your chance. Take it. Take the chance to show that the defense is progressing. This is a huge 2 weeks. You've got to go 1-1 in these next 2 weeks, at least, for me. You certainly can't lose both games. Can the defense really show that, yes, they are improving, that now the 3 quarters matter more than the fourth against San Fran?
And I like what Bobby said after the game. He said, we're just time to shut up and just prove it. And hopefully that just is his motto going forward. Like, just shut up and go out and play and do it. Like, I think he was getting tired of, all the negative, feedback he's probably been getting and all the negative write-ups about how the defense is playing. And he probably is just over it. And hopefully he can just go out and continue with that same mindset and same attitude and go out and just get it done. And he has all the tools to do so. And hopefully Ken Norton calls a good game, and that, we're sending him on blitzes as well. And, you're mixing it up and giving him different looks. I think if you're giving, you're giving Josh Allen multiple different looks and not just sending, the same guys every single time, I think you can get in his head, cause some erratic throws. We can get some picks. Hopefully our corners are pressing up. We're not playing 10, 15 yards back, and, we're giving up the easy stuff and really make it hard on him. Like, this is a game where we can come in, and I think we could establish some dominance right away and put some scoreboard pressure on them, because I think their defense is going to have a hard time stopping Russ. I think they're going to have a hard time stopping DK and Tyler, and I think this is a game we're going to score some points, and this, we can just shut them down and hold them to 3. This is going to be a game where I think we could dominate.
And in the rest of the NFC West this weekend, the Cardinals play Miami. Hopefully Tua plays a lot better. I watched Tua's game against Rams. It was absolutely dreadful. I'd feel much better about Ryan Fitzpatrick playing in this game, I've got to say, against Arizona. But it's not to be. But hopefully the special teams and the defense can play as well as they did against the Rams, because Miami could really help. Miami's already beaten the Niners and the Rams. Can they get the clean sweep and really help the Seahawks? They're going to be like Seattle's best friend. Go and beat the rest of the NFC West teams, but actually lose to the Seahawks. So hopefully they can right the ship. I actually want the Niners to win on Thursday night against the Packers. It's better for the Seahawks that the Niners win that game, because I think we can safely say with the injuries, the Niners are not going to win the NFC West this year. They're just too banged up, too injured. So hopefully they will win against the Packers, and somehow Shanahan can create some magic and run all over them like he did last season. And then the Rams have got a bye. I've got to say, I don't like the fact the Rams have got a bye week right before they play the Seahawks. I'd rather that was not the case, Robbie, but it is what it is, and we'll talk a bit about that game this time next week, looking into that big matchup in the NFC West. Right, so as far as we go, today we're back after the game to talk about everything that happens in Buffalo. Nice early kickoff for me, 6 p.m. UK time. Makes a change from all those early hours of the morning podcasts that we do. However, we'll be there, we'll be talking about it, and we'll see you then.